The first thing I noticed wasn't her beauty. It was the stillness. The kind that makes you forget what you were about to say, or maybe even who you were before you met her eyes. She stood by the window, light spilling through the thin curtains and catching the edge of her hair, soft, chestnut brown with a few strands of silver that only made her look more certain, more real. She turned, and for a second, I forgot to breathe. "Did I keep you waiting?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried, low, steady, with that quiet confidence that comes from knowing people listen when you speak. I shook my head too quickly. No. Not at all. The truth was I'd been here early. Waiting. Pretending to look at the framed photographs on her wall, the books lying neatly on her shelf. But really, I was trying to steady myself before she walked in. She crossed the room, barefoot, her steps soft against the wooden floor. A faint scent of jasmine followed her, not perfume, something lighter, like it clung to her skin naturally. She wasn't the kind of woman who needed to try. She just was. And that terrified me more than anything. We sat across from each other, a low table between us. The late afternoon sun stretched long and gold, touching her wrist, her collarbone, the curve of her neck. I caught myself staring too long, and she noticed. Of course she did. Her lips curved. Not a smile exactly, something quieter, knowing. "You always look like you're thinking too hard." "Maybe I am." "And what is it this time?" I hesitated. My mind was full of the wrong answers. How the way she tucked her hair behind her ear made my chest tighten. How her laugh stayed in the air longer than it should have. How I kept imagining what she looked like when she wasn't pretending to be fine. "Nothing," I lied. "Just, the light looks different here." Her gaze lingered, patient but sharp. She knew I wasn't talking about the light. It wasn't supposed to feel like this, not between us. She was older, smarter, and far too composed to be anything but careful. And yet, in that quiet space, something unspoken moved between us, a current neither of us wanted to name. She reached across the table to hand me a cup of tea. Her fingers brushed mine, light, deliberate, electric. "Careful," she murmured. "It's hot." But her hand stayed just a second too long. And I wasn't sure if she meant the tea anymore. Outside, the day was fading. Inside, the air felt too close. Every sound, the clink of porcelain, the hum of the fan, the slow inhale she tried to hide, filled the space between us like a secret waiting to be said. She looked away first. "You shouldn't look at people the way you do," she said softly. "How's that? Like you're trying to memorize them." Her tone was steady, but there was something fragile beneath it, the slightest tremor, a hesitation that betrayed her calm. I wanted to say I wasn't trying to memorize people. Just her. But before I could answer, a sound broke the moment, the faint creak of the front door opening. We both turned toward it, silence hanging heavy in the air. The warmth of her hands still ghosted against mine. And in that suspended second, between what we were and what we shouldn't be, I realized control wasn't what she lacked. It was what I was about to lose. The door had closed again. It was just her neighbor, dropping off a misdelivered envelope. But in that short moment, something between us had shifted. She seemed further away now. Like she'd remembered something she wasn't supposed to forget. I stayed seated, trying to focus on the steam curling from my untouched tea. She stood by the window again, arms folded loosely, pretending to study the fading light. She did that when she needed distance, turned toward anything that wasn't me. "You should have told me you were coming early," she said after a while, voice careful. "I didn't want to bother you." "You don't," she said too quickly. Then quieter. "You shouldn't." That was how she always spoke, one truth layered over another, never quite meeting in the middle. I'd learned small things about her in these last few months. She loved early mornings but hated the quiet of night. She still wore a ring, though she hadn't been married in years. And every time she laughed, she covered her mouth like it was a habit she'd never unlearned. There were rumors, of course. About her, about me, about why a woman like her would spend hours talking to someone barely past 20. But no one saw what it really was, how she listened like no one else ever had. How she remembered what I said weeks ago. How, sometimes, when she forgot herself, her gaze softened in a way that undid me. That evening, she was wearing a loose gray sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. The light caught the faint lines on her wrist, the small gold bracelet that never left her arm. "You always come here," she said, still not looking at me. "Doesn't anyone wonder where you go?" "Maybe. I don't really give them much to wonder about." Her lips curved slightly. "You're too young to mean that." I smiled back, but the silence that followed wasn't playful. She turned then, finally facing me. Her eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding too much in. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked. "Miss what?" "Letting someone in." For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then she walked toward me, slow, deliberate, like each step was a question she wasn't sure she wanted answered. When she stopped beside me, her hand brushed my shoulder, a small gesture, nothing more. Except it wasn't nothing. Her fingertips lingered, tracing an invisible line through the fabric of my shirt. And when she finally spoke, her voice was barely there. "You shouldn't ask questions like that." I looked up at her, and for the first time, she didn't look away. Her breath touched my cheek, light and warm. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing heavier between us. She could have stepped back. I could have moved. Neither of us did. Her hand slipped away slowly, but the warmth stayed, a quiet reminder that distance was something we were both pretending to believe in. "Do you ever feel lonely?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, she reached across the table, picked up her empty cup, and whispered, "Not when you're here." It was nothing more than a sentence, yet somehow, it felt like a confession. And in that fragile silence afterward, the world outside faded. For the first time, it wasn't just attraction pulling us closer, it was the quiet understanding of two people who had stopped pretending they weren't already falling. It was late, too late for me to still be there. The street outside had gone quiet hours ago, and the only sound in the room was the low hum of her clock, ticking through a silence either of us seemed ready to break. She stood near the doorway, arms crossed, like she was trying to convince herself to tell me to leave. I sat on the couch, pretending to look at my phone, pretending not to notice how her reflection in the window looked like someone caught between staying and running. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, too steady. Whatever this is, it can't happen." I nodded, even though we both knew I didn't mean it. She exhaled slowly, almost relieved that I didn't argue. But then her phone buzzed. The sound sliced through the stillness. A name flashed on the screen, David. Her jaw tightened before she silenced it. She didn't explain, and I didn't ask. But the air changed again, thick with something we weren't supposed to touch. "Old friend?" I tried to sound casual. She gave a small, tired smile. "Something like that." She walked toward the table to set her phone down, but her hand trembled slightly, just enough for me to notice. When she turned, I was already standing. Too close. The space between us narrowed to nothing. Her breath caught, and for a second, neither of us moved. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm not doing anything. That's the problem." Her eyes flickered, to my mouth, then away. The room felt too small, every second stretching longer than it should. I reached up, barely touching a strand of her hair that had fallen against her cheek. She didn't pull away. "Not yet. You're making this harder," she said, her voice shaking now. "I think you already did," I murmured. She closed her eyes. For a moment she swayed closer, just enough for me to feel the warmth of her body, her pulse quickening beneath the surface. Then a knock at the door. We both froze. Her hand dropped instantly, and she stepped back so fast the air between us seemed to tear. Another knock. Louder this time. Her breathing was shallow. "It's probably my sister," she whispered. I should go," I said. But she shook her head, a reflex, a slip. "No. Just stay there." She opened the door just enough to talk through it. I caught only fragments, small talk, her voice steady again, practiced. When the door finally closed, she leaned against it, eyes closed, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Either of us spoke. She turned slowly, meeting my eyes. Something had broken open between us, the line we'd drawn, crossed, and redrawn too many times. I took a step forward. So did she. We didn't touch, not really. But when she looked up at me, the distance left between us was nothing more than the length of a heartbeat. And in that moment I knew we weren't fighting the world outside anymore. We were fighting what was already happening inside us. The next time I saw her, everything felt different. The air, the light, even the way she looked at me, as if she'd spent days convincing herself I didn't exist, and lost the argument anyway. She opened the door slowly. No smile this time. "You shouldn't be here," she said. I hesitated. "You didn't tell me not to." Her expression faltered, just for a moment. Then she stepped aside. "You can't keep doing that. Turning everything into a reason to stay." I wanted to tell her I wasn't trying to stay. That I was just drawn to her voice, her quiet, the way her eyes carried both kindness and distance like two halves of the same wound. But lies had never sounded right in front of her. She poured herself a glass of water, her hands unsteady. The faint sound of it filled the silence. Finally she said, "You're too young to understand what this would mean. Then explain it to me." Her laugh was short, sharp. "You think I haven't been here before? The late-night talks, the stolen looks, the pretending it's nothing. It always costs something, and it's never worth what it takes. Then why haven't you stopped me?" That made her look at me, really look. Her eyes were tired but alive, her chest rising and falling as if every breath hurt. She walked toward me, slow, deliberate, her voice quieter now. "You think I don't want to?" She was close enough now that I could see the small scar beneath her lip, the faint tremor in her fingers. I didn't move. Neither did she. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me you don't feel it." Her throat tightened. "You don't know what you're asking for." "I think I do." She reached out then, her hand brushing the side of my face, thumb tracing the corner of my mouth as if memorizing it. It wasn't affection. It was surrender disguised as control. Her touch lingered, and the air between us thinned. The warmth of her skin, the scent of jasmine and rain, it pulled at something deep, something I couldn't fight anymore. "I can't do this," she whispered, even as her fingers slid through my hair. "Then don't say it," I breathed. "Just stay." Her eyes softened, a flash of everything she'd been holding back. Fear. Want. Regret. Her breath brushed my neck. The world went quiet. For a second, nothing existed but the closeness, the trembling silence, the faint brush of her lips barely grazing my jaw. And then, she pulled back, shaking her head. "This is wrong." "Then stop me." Her eyes darted between my mouth and my eyes, 1 heartbeat, 2, 3, before she whispered, "I can't." The words hung there, fragile and dangerous. Her hand still rested against my chest, feeling the rhythm she'd just thrown into chaos. We both leaned in, the space between us disappearing, and just before our lips met, her phone buzzed again. We froze. The moment shattered. But this time, either of us stepped away. The next morning, she didn't answer my calls. Not one. By evening, I was outside her office, pretending it was coincidence. She looked startled when she saw me, not angry, just exposed. Like she'd spent all day holding something heavy and I'd just caught her before she could set it down. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, softer this time. "I had to make sure you were okay." Her eyes flicked toward the half-closed door behind her, the shadow of someone moving inside. Then she sighed. "We need to talk." Inside, the air smelled faintly of perfume and paper. The blinds were half-drawn, casting thin lines of light across her face. She didn't sit. Neither did I. "He knows," she said finally. The words landed like a drop of ink spreading through water. I blinked. "Who?" My ex. He came by this morning. Said he saw us that night after the conference. Her jaw tightened. He must have followed me. He thinks I'm involved. I swallowed. Are you? She stared at me. Don't ask questions you already know the answers to. The silence between us turned fragile. Every breath felt louder than it should. She moved past me to close the blinds fully, and in that brief moment, her shoulder brushed mine, a small, accidental touch that set everything spinning again. Her hand lingered on the cord a little too long, trembling just slightly. You could lose everything, she said, voice low. People talk. They twist things. I don't care. You will. Her tone was steady, but her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve, a nervous tell I'd only seen once before. What are you not telling me? I asked. Her lips parted, hesitated. Then, I asked for a transfer? Before all this started. The words hit harder than they should have. When? Next month. So you were planning to leave before you. She finished. I laughed quietly, not out of humor, but disbelief. So what was this then? A goodbye in slow motion? Her eyes shimmered with something I couldn't name. You think I planned this? That I wanted to care about someone who still has their whole life to live? Then don't call it a mistake, I said. Not when you keep looking at me like that. She stepped closer, anger and longing tangled in her voice. You have no idea what this could cost me. Then why haven't you walked away? Her breath hitched. One step. Then another. Until I could feel the warmth of her body near mine. Her hand brushed my arm, a small, trembling contact that betrayed every word she'd just spoken. Because I already did once, she whispered, and it felt worse than anything I've ever lost. The confession hung between us like static. Her phone buzzed again, this time, a message lighting up the screen, transfer approved. Her eyes flicked to it. Then to me. Neither of us moved. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the air itself was daring one of us to speak first. Finally I said, Then maybe this time, you don't have to go. Her reply was only a breath, almost a whisper. Don't make me choose. But her hand didn't pull away. The rain had started again, the kind that fell slow and heavy, blurring everything beyond the window. She stood by it, arms folded, pretending to watch the street below. But her reflection betrayed her, the faint quiver of her lip, the rise and fall of her chest too quick to be calm. I closed the door behind me. Quietly. No words this time. There weren't any left that hadn't already been said. She didn't turn. You shouldn't have come. I tried not to. That made her laugh, barely a sound, more a soft exhale through her nose. You're terrible at pretending you don't care. I learned from you. That earned me a look over her shoulder, sharp at first, then uncertain. Her eyes met mine through the reflection, both of us caught between wanting and fearing the same thing. When I finally stepped closer, she didn't move away. The room smelled of coffee gone cold, of her perfume fading into the quiet. Each step felt like crossing a line that had been drawn and redrawn too many times. You really want to ruin us both? She asked, voice low, shaky in a way that made the words tremble between us. Maybe not ruin, I said, but stop pretending it never mattered. Her breath caught. For a second, her hand hovered, suspended between pushing me away and pulling me closer. When she finally placed it against my chest, it wasn't resistance. It was surrender disguised as hesitation. You're too young to understand what this means, she whispered. Then explain it. Her eyes softened, tired, sad, tender. It means I wake up tomorrow and everything feels different. I can't undo that. What if I don't want to undo it? The words slipped out too fast, too honest. For a long beat, all I heard was the rain and the uneven rhythm of her breathing. She turned fully now, close enough that I could see the tiny droplets clinging to her hair, the faint tremor in her fingers. You have no idea what you're doing to me, she said, and it sounded like both a warning and a confession. Then tell me to leave. I murmured. And I will. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Just silence. A long, aching silence that said everything her pride wouldn't. When she finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "If you stay, I won't stop you this time." The room tilted, the air thick, electric. Every inch between us burned with what we'd been holding back for too long. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She closed her eyes, not out of fear, but in defeat, in relief, in something raw and human. The world outside vanished. Her hand slid from my chest to my wrist, holding it there, trembling. No words. Just breath. Just closeness. Just the quiet understanding that whatever happened next, there would be no pretending anymore. And when she finally opened her eyes, the question was gone. Only the answer remained, in the way either of us stepped back. Morning came soft, the kind that hums quietly through half-open curtains and smells faintly of rain on concrete. She sat by the window again, only this time, she didn't hide behind the glass. No distance, no pretending. Just stillness, a quiet that didn't need fixing. I leaned against the doorway, watching her fingers trace the rim of her mug. The world outside had started moving again, cars, birds, life. But in that small room, everything felt suspended, like the air itself had decided to give us a few more moments before it all caught up. She looked over at me, her eyes softer now. "You didn't leave," she said, as if still testing whether it was real. "I didn't want to," I replied. She smiled, tired, real, beautiful in the kind of way that made my chest ache. "You don't make things easy. I thought maybe it's time we stopped making them impossible." She laughed under her breath, the sound cracked, unsteady but warm. Then she looked away again, blinking slowly, like she was trying to memorize the feeling of peace before the world demanded explanations. I crossed the room and stood behind her. The morning light framed her hair in gold. I reached out, slowly, and rested a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. For once, neither of us did. Her hand came up to cover mine, her thumb brushing lightly against my skin. The smallest gesture, but it said more than anything we could have spoken. For weeks, we had been orbiting something we were too scared to name. But now, standing there in silence, I realized it wasn't about the fear of being seen, it was about finally allowing ourselves to be. She turned slightly, her face only inches from mine. I could see the faint trace of last night's emotion in her eyes, not regret, just relief. "People won't understand," she murmured. "Then they don't have to," I said. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," I admitted. "But neither is pretending this never happened." The pause that followed wasn't heavy. It was full, the kind of silence that carried everything unspoken but understood. She stood and stepped closer until we were breathing the same slow rhythm. Her hand slipped into mine, fingers interlocking with a certainty that didn't ask permission. And then, a simple gesture, quiet and complete, she rested her forehead against mine. No words. No promises. Just presence. It wasn't a movie ending. It was something better, imperfect, unsteady, but real. Outside, the sky cleared, sunlight breaking through. I felt her thumb trace slow circles against my wrist, grounding me. For the first time, either of us was running. Whatever came next, it would come with both of us standing here, together, finally.